My name is Freddy Roman, and we're located in Littleton, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes northwest of Boston. My business and what I do here, well, mainly nowadays is kind of just restoration work, conservation work on occasion as well. And depending if the price is a good margin, I would take on a commission work. But those are kind of far and few today, probably because I don't really push to be a custom furniture maker anymore. The reason being is there's so many other woodworkers in the area, and in the antique world, the value of antiques have gone so far low that it's far cheaper to have a client purchase that, preserve the history, and just have me restore it. So that's mainly what I do, and occasionally I do some refinishing and stripping and everything else. But mainly these days it's kind of restoration work. I got into woodworking, and how I got into woodworking, I would say my first interest was when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and my uncle gave me a set of like, I don't know, a kid's tool chest, and in there it had like a hammers and screwdrivers and a block plane and a fret saw and a really child sized hand saw. And because of that tool chest, I decided for some oddball reason, I don't know if it was a booklet in there, and I wanted to do the footstool that they had. So I made a whole bunch of footstools, and I found some paint in Connecticut behind a garage. It happens to be green, and I just painted them green. But ever since that day, I've been kind of hooked. I really was attracted about the tools and how they worked. I probably didn't know how they worked, but as time flew by, I kind of got a better understanding. So it's kind of what kind of kicked my interest into woodworking. Well, no, I'm not. I'm not self-taught. I went to the Furniture Institute of Massachusetts. I attended that school up in Beverly, which is about 45 minutes north from Littleton, which I am here. And I learned from Master Philip C. Lowe, who went to North Ministry School, and he then also taught at North Ministry School before starting the Furniture Institute of Massachusetts. And essentially, it's about the same concept as North Ministry School, but it's much smaller. It's really more of a 1-to-6 ratio, 6 students max, and users as a shop assistant. And what that allows is for students to really get good one-on-one education, and also you can really challenge yourself because there's no limitations. Structure is up to you. We can give you as much structure as you want, but really we want you to really challenge yourself. You're not going to be making masterpieces there. You're in your eyes you're just developing your eye. So you get to really learn a lot there. We have the basic tool chest. We have a set of sawhorses, a table. He wants you to make at least a sample bedpost and a chair. And after that, you're kind of open to do whatever you like. So, and when I was a student, I wasn't anything special. Nothing I owned was photographed because it just wasn't up to par. I thought they were beautiful when I was a student, but when I reflect back, I certainly did not have a good eye. So it's taken some time, but there's a process. Well, I'm first drawn to more period furniture, especially if I had to choose one period or two. I would say Federal period is my more specialty or more interest. There'd be the William and Mary, but anything period I really truly love. For the last couple years, I've been more open-minded to more modern and contemporary. The reason being because there's a big movement around here in Massachusetts that the old brown and shiny or the old robust pieces are not what people are looking for. They are looking for more modern, more contemporary look, more streamlined. So I have shifted over slightly, but deep down inside, my roots are period furniture. Several years ago, I was making about 15 pieces, period pieces, for a specialty museum out there. I can't really talk about it too much due to the contracts, but I was hired on to work on 15 pieces. And then I worked on couple years after that, I worked for a museum called the Connecticut Historical Society, or Windsor Historical Society. And there I was able to replicate about 15 to 18 chairs in the period form, period style. I did the rush weaving to them. I did a slant top desk, several Chippendale mirrors, and a few tables. So they were all period correct. When I say period correct, I mean they look period. The approach, how I got to A to Z, it did involve some machinery. As I always reference, the machines are my apprentices. So the bulk of the work was removing materials done with machines, but everything else was finessed by hand. I wrote an article for Mortise and Tenon magazine, and that was kind of the discussion. And it's like, if it's a period piece, 17th century, there's no reason for me to be taking the material down by machines. To make it look authentic, to make the corrections necessary, I would go out in the woods and split the tree down, and I would rive them, and I would process them all by hand. And I would carve it or, join it together all both by hand. I have a tool chest full of period tools to do period reproductions. And if I have to do that, I'm comfortable enough to do that. And of course, there's always a balance. And the balance is, are you willing to pay for it? Are you understanding what's involved? And the value of my work. I'm not there to fool anyone either. I'm not here to say that this is 100% original. I'm there to give you your desire to not worsen the value of the piece, but also correct it properly. So I believe that there's a juggle, between hand and power, and you have to strike that balance depending on the request of the client. But also it's very important to educate them, to keep them informed. Like, all right, I can give you A and B option, but you need to be aware of the value and the concerns, especially if you plan on reselling this. If you're going to keep it to yourself, then maybe it doesn't matter. And then you have that client who you educate them, and they still don't want a more modern approach. Like, this is only should be shellacked. And it's like, no, I want polyurethane, or I want a varnish. So you educate them, you keep them informed, saying that that's not a problem. The last coat will be varnishes or polyurethane, but a layer underneath that, it will be the proper finish. And that a conservator or a properly educated restorer can remove that top layer and bring it back down to its natural state. So it's a balancing act. Educating the client mentality there, or that approach, really came from Don Williams. He always emphasized, educate the client. Most craftsmen or craftspeople today are hesitant to have the client be over your shoulder. He says, no, welcome them. Show them all the hard work that it takes to replicate something. Even if it's easy and how quickly it evaporates, you also got to emphasize to them, this only occurred so fast because of my years of working in the field and experience. I've struggled for years to get to this point. So it's easy now, but essentially what you're paying for is the skill and the knowledge, and also that I am not screwing up or making the piece worse. I'm giving you your desire, and I'm getting there as quickly as possible. But you still have to pay the going rate. So you have to welcome that. You have to welcome the questions. And you keep them informed, saying, I'm more than happy to answer all your questions. But if it takes a little bit longer because of your questions, I also have to charge you accordingly. So by you being upfront, you also welcome them and make them realize that I'm also using these solvents, which are toxic, and I'm also replicating something that you desire that hopefully you can cherish and pass down to the next generation. I have an assistant that comes into the shop. His name is Paul Jasper. And he went to North Main Street School and taken a few classes. And we met through Facebook, just conversation. And he comes in lots of times, once a week or, a few times a month. And he quickly realized, because he wanted to be doing woodworking full-time at some point. And he's a very successful scientist. He's very knowledgeable. And he's always questioning everything, my approach, everything, which is great. And I appreciate him questioning that, because that's how you really learn. But he quickly realized that to do this for a living is much more difficult. Okay. Not only do I have to answer emails and push in proposals and meet clients and do a lot of research and research what's available out there, and not only does that take so much time out of the day, you also got to go ahead and make money behind the bench, and you got to be standing up. So when he comes in here and he works 5 or 6 hours, he's just like, boy, I don't know how you do this hunched over all day. And I don't know how your hands don't hurt. And there's so much sanding and so much scraping. There's so much work involved to get to the final outcome that it's just extremely surprising. And then everyone pushes this whole real craft. Everyone pushes this whole keeping the craft alive. But you go everywhere, and there's just basic information. And basic information is great for when you're starting. But why we need the real craft, why we need the keeping the craft alive, it's the intermediate and the advanced levels. And we're lagging on all that. The reason being is everyone wants to make something very simple. and they get the satisfaction of making something. But when it really takes a lot of work, the majority of people are not interested, which is the issue with making furniture. Furniture that are a simple table or a simple bench or a live edge table is very simple. But go ahead and make a Chippendale chair with stretchers and bone claw feet and carvings and scrolled arms. That's very expensive. That is very labor intensive. You need a lot of knowledge, a lot of information. And with that, knowledge is lagging, and that knowledge we're losing constantly. So I believe that it's great to see the movement. It's great to see these individuals picking up the craft and learning how to do the basics, but you also have to strive for more. Don't settle. And I constantly am getting emails of people saying, I thought this is all I wanted to do, and I quickly realized that it got boring, it got old because I wasn't challenging myself. And because of me, because of what I'm posting, by me inspiring them, I help them, motivate them to try different things. And then people always question me and always say, oh, you're making everything look simple, making your craft look easy. And people say, you should make it come across as, it takes a lot of skill to do this and upsell yourself. And I says, then it's obvious that it takes a lot of skill. But the hobbyist or the amateur, if I don't break it down for them to make it look easy, then they'll never go ahead and do it. And that's kind of a balance that you need to be able to welcome these guys in, suck them in, saying, it's easier than you think. But obviously there's a process, and you have to understand the process. And I always like to tell them that, obviously this is not ebony and this is not Brazilian rosewood, but the mentality you got to have when it comes to this is it's wood and it grows on trees. If you screw up, it's A-okay. That's part of the journey. Really, what makes you become that so-called master is not only being able to produce something, but be able to fix your mistakes and make them disappear. And that's the balance. And that's that goes back to, I strongly believe finishing is very important. It's kind of one of those things. If you give me a C grade piece of furniture, I can make it an A grade, because if you give me solid foundation, even though if there may be a slight gap here, a slight chunk missing here, a gap here, I can fill that, I can blend that in, I can make it look flawless, I can fold it in. No one is ever going to tell. No one is ever going to see it. And overall, when you bring it to someone, they're going to put their hands on it and say, I love the color, I love how it feels, I love the smell of wood and wax. That's what they care. Obviously, the overall is important. But if you happen to be a 16th of an inch lower than they required, they're not going to put a tape measure to it. They're just so overwhelmed. You strive for perfection, you accept the results. Okay? Because in the end, you're human. What it matters is the reduction of your mistakes, which is important when it comes to reference surfaces. You only depend on 2 reference surfaces. The reason being is there's a 50% less margin of error. If you start flipping things around, laying everything off all these different edges or surfaces, then the error gets multiplied. So now it becomes 150% mistake capability. My friend who comes in here, who helps in the shop, he quickly learns that. He quickly learns, I'm one of those guys, and I think I'm quite rare, is that I'm able to just let go. I tell the individual what I want, okay? My approach. You have a question, feel free and ask him. But I'm off, okay? I'm off doing my own thing. I just let you do your own thing. And the reason being that I can do that is in case they screw up, I can fix it. In case you cut this piece too short, you just cut another one. Okay? Now, is it going to get frustrated if you did it 5 or 6 times over again? Yes. But in the end, hopefully in the future, you're not going to do that again. So you learn your lesson. And it's like with me, everyone says, oh, it's unbelievable what you can do. It's just the only reason I'm able to do it is because I screwed up so many times. And now it's like, oh, if I don't pay attention here, I'm going to screw up. And that's what you got to remember, those things. You got to strike that memory bank and be like, I've done this before. I don't want to screw this part up because I've screwed it before. If I feel comfortable to say that, I've mastered, almost mastered one thing, it's probably federal inlaying, banding, and veneering. That's kind of like, I am extremely comfortable, whatever project that comes in, any veneering work, any patching, anything of that magnitude, I can say, yeah, I can handle that. But anyone calls me having veneer issue, blah, 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 I'm like, yeah, I can handle it. But you haven't seen the job. I'm 100% confident I can handle it. I'm not sure why. It's just something that I feel very comfortable with. And it's probably one of those things that when a lot of people around here, when they think of veneer, they think low quality. But what they don't realize is early on, the craftsmen of the era, realize that this wood is precious. We're already complaining in the 1800s that we're not able to get as much material of this quality anymore. And it's now 2017, and the same thing occurs today. So I strongly believe that veneer is very important. Now, modern day veneer is, it's for lack of a better term, very low grade. But if you have the capability of resawing your own or finding, old stock that's good thickness, and in France there's a guy named Patrick George, and he supplies great sawn veneers. And I have some sawn veneers in the other room that I can show you. Something of that caliber is still useful today and still of high quality because it acts like wood, even though it's thick veneer. So for me, no idea why, because I don't have a vacuum back here, I don't have a vacuum press, but what I do have is the knowledge and the capability of using high glue, using a protein glue, and using, thick clamps or cauls, and I can just make it work. That's what I'm most comfortable with. I have two planes I use the most, and it's the Lee Nelson 102 bronze plane, the Lee Nelson 60.5. Those two planes, they can't live without. They just, I'm on my fourth iron on them, and I use them all the time. There's a series of tools that are always, on the bench or within a hand's reach that I find very important. And, depending on the scope of the work, I use a router plane constantly. And a router plane is a very important tool for me. And they're just so useful, especially for the restoration work. And I'm very good at breaking rules. So I basically, everything that someone says you can't do, I do it. Because I feel that not enough people try to bend the rules. So I want to see how far I can stretch these rules out before failing. So I use a black plane sometimes to plane in long boards. I use them against the grain. I use them to do different things that are not supposed to. And they never failed me. So I use them constantly.